Welcome back, folks. Cover one, Draft Weekly. John Helmkamp, Daniel in harm's way, Danny Traps, Danny Deltoids, whatever muscles make sense to you this week. I liked it last week. I'm just going to keep building on it. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. We got a great episode this week. The fact that we get to do this once a week allows us to really get that film in, get into these guys and talk about them. And since we've got the Senior Bowl coming up in a few weeks now, I'm telling you what, I'm absolutely giddy. And this might be one of the most stacked lineups of Senior Bowl players that I've seen. And this is, again, my second year going, so I haven't been there for like all of the last couple of years, but I've kept up with it, and I'm extremely excited for the players we're going to get to see. Some of these guys are not just, we're talking about like fringe first rounds, like top 15, 20 players in the draft. It's going to be fantastic, man.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm the same way. I've never been down to the Senior Bowl. I can't wait to get down there. But obviously, as someone that pays attention heavily to the draft, and I've got my own spreadsheet databases and all that crap just for fun that now I get to give to you listeners, the Senior Bowl has always been something that I love. So can't wait to put eyes on it. But yeah, we're talking a lot of guys that could be top 10 to 15 draft picks. A lot of round one talent on both sides of the ball. It's stacked, man. This is a really, really great roster. And tonight we're going to start getting into it. But before we start getting into some of those players that we're going to break down a little bit later, I just want to touch on a little bit of news that we have around the league. Washington hires Adam Peters as their general manager, and along with every other team in the NFL that seems to be interviewing Ben Johnson, he's getting interviews with Washington as well. He's going to be a hot name. But this is a team that we know is looking quarterback heavy, and they have 3 picks in the top 40 of the draft. They might have what it takes to swing for 101. What are your thoughts with Washington?
They absolutely could. I think that they're going to be a little more methodical about the situation, specifically coming from San Francisco. I know that they did take that swing and go and get a guy who ended up not working out for them specifically. And I still have like a lot of ties to him, hopefully working out for Dallas one day. So like, I'm just holding on to Trey Lance as this possible player. But at the end of the day, I think that Peters has seen a lot of what does work for San Francisco. Obviously, you can't replicate what they do offensively, but there is a big reason that Ben Johnson is linked. And, he knows Adam Peters, and there's a lot of things that you can do with a quarterback that has limitations. Jared Goff is a good NFL quarterback, but the reason that he's being able to be successful is because he has a rope, okay? If he didn't have the arm, I'm not trying to dog on him like we did a couple weeks, like last week and stuff like that. But Tua, I've talked a lot about Tua, and sometimes it feels like he has to be in a perfect situation. I don't think that Jared Goff needs to do that, and I think that we're seeing that Ben Johnson can get a lot out of his players. And Washington's got some players, if you guys haven't known, Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson. I loved Brian Robinson coming out, but still having, Antonio Gibson. They have Curtis Samuel. They have a lot of really good weapons. And there is a world where maybe they don't go up to the 101, but they just kind of wait it out. I'm gonna sell you on this right now because we're gonna talk about it. What if they even traded down and took J.J. McCarthy for that offense and try to load up on the offensive line? Because J.J. McCarthy, like I said, we're going to talk about J.J. a little bit, but he would work best in a Ben Johnson type of offense, a run-heavy scheme with a lot of play action. But the difference between him and Goff is that you can run him, you can move him out of the pocket, and he can take yards, and he keeps his eyes downfield. So that's just something I've been kind of toying around with for the last 5 minutes as we're going on this. And I'm talking myself into it more and more, especially if Ben Johnson is the guy that ends up in Washington.
Ladies and gentlemen, that scenario is news to me as well. We did not discuss that before the show. And I like it. I can see that working because that's what Michigan ran. They were a run-heavy, defense-first system. And I know that Washington just moved off some of their defensive pieces. Both of their really top-tier edges they moved in Sweat and Chase. But they still want to, I think, have that identity. Ron Rivera, he's built that. He always wanted that to be. We don't know what's going to be coming down the pike for Washington, but I think they always want to be that kind of gritty, run first system. And like Ben Johnson, he's the perfect complement with Dan Campbell in Detroit because Dan Campbell has that gritty defense, tenacious, pursue the ball, and then run it on the offensive side. And Ben Johnson was like, yeah, cool, I can do that. Yeah. So it could work up there in Washington. JJ McCarthy is a really interesting fit that I hadn't thought about. I think a lot of what Washington does is going to come down to how they evaluate this quarterback class. Do they think that there's a quarterback worth just sticking and picking at 103? Yeah. Do they think Jaden Daniels is worth the 3rd overall selection? He's getting a lot of buzz where he's climbing up these draft ranks, and quarterbacks get pushed into that top 5 every single year. I don't know. I could see that if they want that athletic quarterback, like you were just mentioning how JJ McCarthy can run, which he can if people don't know. Jaden Daniels is almost a run first quarterback in terms of how many times he just tucks it and takes off. So maybe Washington just decides to stick and pick, or if they decide that they want to move back, where JJ McCarthy is going to go in this draft class, we have no idea. Is he going to get pushed into being a first-round pick? Is he going to go on day 2? I don't know. But if they could trade down into those teen pick areas and get one of these top offensive tackles and then come back at quarterback later, I wouldn't hate that plan for Washington at all.
Yeah, I know people are going to yell at me for this, and I understand it. But sometimes the plan outweighs, the process. And I think that passing on Marvin Harrison Jr. might be not a great idea. But at the same time, if you are a quarterback team and you think someone might come up and try to get a Jaden Daniels, like if you're not sold on Jaden Daniels, and you don't even have to go down that far, you could just trade back 1 or 2 spots. Granted, it's going to be tough with a lot of these teams trying to have to get up. The New York Giants are a team to watch trading up in this draft, and that could be Vegas too. Like there's a couple of teams that could work, and while they still have Terry McLaurin, he's getting a little bit older, maybe they decide to trade him in the offseason and then just go full bore and draft Marvin Harrison Jr. at 3. I don't know what's going to happen. There's lots of things that we have to figure out. I was just throwing a scenario out that I really thought about, and I was like, hey, this could be kind of fun if all things worked out for Washington. So, and obviously Ben Johnson has to be the head coach in that scenario as well. We'll find out all of these things. Washington's going to be a very interesting topic of discussion, but that for me kind of goes into another very interesting topic of discussion as New England this week hires Gerard Mayo as their head coach. And it's become aware to me for the first time, if you have, a plan in place for your head coach, you don't need an interview process.
Oh, yeah.
I
had no idea.
So that was cool to find out that if you have that set in stone, then they're like, yeah, go ahead and do what you want to do.
The succession plan clause. Yeah. Had no idea.
Had never heard of it before. So that's very cool. You learn something new every day in this industry, this business, and their GM is going to be a very interesting find because, again, Bill Belichick was the coach and the GM. So how do you think New England's going to go about this specific hire? They already have the head coach. Typically, you see teams go GM, then head coach. They went the other way. I got to hear your thoughts on it.
I think it's incredibly interesting because Gerard Mayo being defense first. I mean, it basically seems like New England just went, hey, I really like what just happened in Houston. We brought back our former linebacker and turned him into the head coach, and he's killing it and took them from being a 2nd overall pick last year to being in the playoffs this year. Hey, guess what? Gerard Mayo is also one of the best linebackers in Patriots history. Yeah. Let's give him the head coaching nod. And it's like carbon print, right? Just copy and paste.
Feels like it.
It does a little bit, which is funny, but apparently they have the succession plan already in place. I don't know. I'd like to see when that thing was signed. Let's get some dates.
Me too. I agree.
When that succession plan was put into place. I need receipts. New England. I think that Gerard Mayo is going to have a little bit of say in the general manager position. Robert Kraft loves Gerard Mayo.
Yeah.
I think that he's going to want whoever's going to be in charge of personnel to align with Gerard Mayo's vision for what the team's going to look like. I can see them trying to build very similarly to how Houston was building, which is we want to lock down on the defensive side of the ball and get a franchise cornerstone player on that side, like what they did with getting Will Anderson, which took an expensive trade up, but man, it looks like it was worth it at this point.
Yeah.
Will Anderson's cooking. They also took quarterback in that draft class with the 2nd overall pick. Guess what? who's got the second overall pick. It's New England. They're just literally duplicating what Houston did last year. They're likely going to go quarterback at 2 overall unless they make a trade up to 1.
Yeah.
And then I could see them trying to get a franchise face on the defensive side of the ball. I'm just talking myself into this. I haven't even thought about this before the show, but they are just duplicating exactly where Houston was 1 year ago. And it's hilarious to me and also awesome at the same time. I'm very curious to see what they're going to do in terms of getting a general manager in there for personnel decisions. And if that person is going to be so willing to say, yes, this is Gerard Mayo's identity for what the team is going to be, and I'm going to get the players that are going to fit that identity. I'm very curious because I still haven't heard them linked to any New England GM candidates yet. Have you? I know there's a lot of rumors swirling with they've interviewed such and such. I didn't see them having anyone on the radar yet for New England.
Not really. And that's, again, what we're really talking about is the interesting part about this is that's why you want to get the GM kind of nailed down so that you have an idea of how you want to build the team with the coach and how the GM sees. Now it kind of feels like the head coach is the one signing off on the GM, and that can get a little dicey at times. So that's going to be fun to see how it pans out. New England is restarting their organization, essentially. It was Bill Belichick, Tom Brady. It's over. It's completely over. Mac Jones at 15 a few years ago did not work out for the Patriots. Time to move on, cut ties, and really reinvigorate what New England is going to be about. Are they going to try to be, scoring points? Are they going to still be more of a defense, play solid defense, run the ball, and then play action off of it? Because I do think that if you're at 2 and you take Drake May, there's a lot of things you can do with that, but you also don't have any weapons. You got Demario Douglas. You got to have some offensive players. Yeah, well, I mean, Tyquan Thornton, I had as a day 3 player when he came out, and they traded down and then traded back up to get him in the second round, which, I mean, you can tell that Bill Belichick spends countless minutes on wide receivers on Sundays,
countless minutes. So, countless minutes on the wide receiver position.
Very, very interesting to see. But yeah, New England is revamping everything, and I'm as much as we've all kind of formed this New England go away attitude over the last 20 plus years.
Hey, Chiefs fan, Bills fan,
exactly.
Both of us are happy to see New England out of the picture.
They are, but I'm also I want to see what's next. I'm excited for them. I'm excited for Mayo. I'm excited to see where the direction takes them because they still have a ton of players on that defense that can really be good. Christian Barmore is fantastic. And don't forget Christian Gonzalez fell to them.
Talk about my Oregon boy. Let's go.
Christian Gonzalez. And he was going to be the defensive rookie of the year. He was. He was on pace to be the defensive rookie of the year. Got hurt early on. So lots can happen in New England.
I thought he was CB1 in that draft class, by the way.
Yeah, for sure. He was for me too.
Loved Gonzo. And obviously part of that's probably because I'm an Oregon fan and I had a lot of exposure to him and stuff like that. But he destroyed the combine from the athletic testing perspective, and production was there. Yeah, they've got pieces. It's going to be very interesting to see what they do, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Do they just roll Drake May? Is it just chalk at this point where they wanted to in the draft Drake May, which could be. I love Drake May. Let's talk about another situation we've brought up every episode, and we probably will bring up every single episode until the draft. What's new in Chicago? Cliff Kingsbury is interviewing for the Chicago OC job. He was a quarterback coach at USC, which happens to be the alma mater of a particular quarterback who is rumored to be the number 1 overall pick, no matter who's drafting him. Yeah, I don't know if you've heard about him. His name's Caleb Williams. He's pretty good. I think we should keep our eyes on him. But them bringing in Cliff is interesting. Is this just Chicago using this as a 2-factor authentication about Caleb Williams and getting some more insight with him while also actually interviewing for the OC? Or do they actually have intentions of Cliff Kingsbury potentially taking that offensive coordinator role?
I personally think that the Chicago Bears are doing their due diligence with everything. And I think this is really smart. They brought in Greg Roman earlier last week. And or earlier this week. I can't remember now. My weeks and days are all running together. But what they wanted to know, in my opinion, was, hey, you coached Lamar Jackson. You ran the offense. You formed this offense around an electric quarterback and a run game. How did you go about doing that? If we were to keep
ding.
Justin Fields and make you the offensive coordinator, how would you construct this offense with this quarterback? And now on Thursday, hey, Cliff, you coached Caleb Williams, the guy who's number one. Wait, we've got the number one pick. It's very possible that we could draft Caleb Williams. What did he do well? How there's a lot of talk about this offense in USC and how it doesn't look very good, and the regression after the Notre Dame game. What happened there? What are we talking about with Caleb Williams? A lot of due diligence on the Chicago Bears' part, and good on them. It feels right now, as an outside perspective, that they don't want to get this situation wrong, because like we talked about on our first episode, if you bring back Eberflus, which they did, this is the year. If it all goes downhill this year, he's gone and you're restarting again. Maybe even Ryan Poles is gone. Or so there's a lot of different things that can happen in Chicago. So when we're talking about Cliff Kingsbury, I would be very, very shocked if Cliff Kingsbury got back into the NFL anytime soon, regardless of if it's OC, QB coach, any of that stuff, based on what we've seen. And again, when you just go back and watch USC's offense most of this season, it was not very good. It wasn't. There's a lot of good players there, but the infrastructure, the route concepts, the spacing, just the little details, they didn't make a lot of sense. And
you know what that sounds a lot like? His tenure in Arizona.
Oh, really? Oh,
it sounds exactly the same.
It's funny.
No, I agree with you. I think if Special K were to be the offensive coordinator for Chicago, that would be quite the choice. But listen, we were texting about it earlier today.
Yeah.
We know exactly what the offense would look like. It would be really poor timing and spacing, and you would be asking Caleb Williams to make something out of nothing time and time again and chucking the ball on a dime 40 yards down the field down to DJ Moore. Oh, yeah, USC. His entire time there.
Oh, yeah, Kyler Murray. To DeAndre Hopkins.
Oh, right. It's just the spray and pray method, right? We're just going to roll out. We're going to chuck it down there somewhere and hope that it hits its target. It, in my opinion, would not be a good hire, but I think that Chicago is doing the right thing. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
And bringing him in because of his experience with Caleb May and bringing in Greg Roman with his experience with Lamar Jackson. It makes so much sense. It's great. And I really hope for Chicago's sake and for Ryan Poles' sake that they don't mess this up. And it's not just picking the right quarterback. It's picking the right combination of quarterback and system and supporting cast and everything. There's so much more that just goes into this than is it Caleb Williams or Justin Fields. I tweeted out earlier this week, you can love Justin Fields as a player. You can believe they should draft Caleb Williams. Both things can be true depending on the supporting cast and the system that he's going into.
Yeah, and the offense, again, like you said, they have to know what they're getting into. They want to know the ins and outs of the players and the different offenses they can run, what offense is best for this guy. And honestly, didn't feel like they knew any of that with Justin Fields over the last couple of seasons. So the fact that, they're trying to figure it out, hat tip to them, and it's a great situation, hopefully unfolding in Chicago as they try to do the smart thing and not just try to glue pieces together and hope they fit, so it's always good thing to see. So Caleb Williams' watch is clearly still on in Chicago, much like there's just lots of things that can happen with Justin Fields. Just kind of wait and see. It looks like Chicago's going to take their time with this, as they absolutely should.
As of today, January 18th, 2024, I'd probably say it's about a 60% chance of they're taking Caleb. That's probably the way that I'm leaning right now. So we'll see how it all unfolds. Real quick, want to hit on a couple names. We've passed the deadline for players to declare for the 2024 NFL Draft. Real quick, not going to do deep dives on all these players, but officially returning to school are two of the top three guys that were coming out of the offense of Ohio State, Mika Egbuka and Travion Henderson. That's huge for Ohio State. and their college quests. As a Michigan fan for you, I'm sure you're not thrilled about that. Huge for the NFL draft. And Mika Egbuka, I think, was a late first-round draft pick, wide receiver, in my opinion. I think he would have been kind of in that second tier of wide receivers that we have this year in a deep class. But returning to school, he could work himself in like Rome Odunze did. Rome Odunze returned to school last year as a junior, and now he's being talked about as being a top 3 wide receiver being drafted this year. It's almost kind of set in stone at this point. It feels like the top 3 wide receivers are Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Almost set in stone at this point. Emeka Egbuka feels similar. He's going to go back and he's going to have to deal with Luther Burden and Jalen Trattoria from Arizona. His last name was eluding me there for a second. Those two are probably in contention to be the top 2 wide receivers next year. Early on, way early, foul those names away. But Emeka Egbuka seems like he's going to be kind of right there in those top 3 wide receivers. Trayvon Henderson was the RB1 in this draft class if he came out.
Yep.
So huge for him to go back. This running back draft class, not great. Not a good year to need running backs. Although there's like good depth pieces, the top end talent in this draft class is not there. Declared JJ McCarthy, which we've been talking about a lot on the show over the first 2 episodes.
Yeah. To JJ going in again last week, I would have been a little surprised by this. And, I got back into his tape. I did more of a actual declarative about his film, not just watching his in the game stuff. And I think that there's a real chance that he's the 3rd quarterback drafted. I think he might push.
Really?
And yes, this is again a hot take time right now, because what JJ McCarthy was asked to do at Michigan is execute the offense and then win on 3rd down. His 3rd down numbers are better than any single quarterback in this entire draft class. He blows them away. And again, this is what the NFL likes to do. This is not just a defensive end, an offensive tackle. They love taking young, good players with a lot of raw tools and then plucking them and putting them into their systems and making them learn. That's why I was talking about JJ possibly being a type for Washington if they traded down. But any of these type of teams that are in that 10 to 15, 12, 20-ish range that could come up and get him, it feels like, especially after he performs, because he's going to test extremely well, and he's going to put on a show at the combine. Like that's
and his pro day. He's going to be just slinging it with no pressure in his face. It's going to be beautiful.
Exactly. So again, this is a hot take time for me because I'm still QB3 Jaden Daniels. I still think he is QB3. I think that the JJ might be closer to where Daniels is drafted than people expect him to be. And that's what I'm very interested to see how it plays out. But at the end of the day, when in big moments, Michigan ran the football and they run the ball, like they just didn't ever really let him get into a rhythm. And that's a negative to him because they didn't really do him justice regardless. He's extremely talented, and the fact that he came out after winning a national championship makes a ton of sense.
It does. Let's ride the wave of momentum. And like we've talked about a lot, quarterbacks get pushed up all the time. Teams are desperate for their franchise guy. And the people that are drafting at the top of the draft typically don't have their franchise guy. That's why they're there. So if you're looking at a guy that is incredibly toolsy and has great athleticism, like JJ McCarthy, I can understand where you're coming from, but I think we're going to have to put some sort of friendly wager on whether JJ or Jaden gets drafted first, because to me, I think
I still think it's going to be Jaden. I just think he's going to get drafted closer to where he is.
I agree. And I think this happens every year where the quarterback draft starts in January, the class, the guys that are projected to go first round. That list gets deeper every single month that passes, heading through the pre-draft process and the combine and the pro day and heading up to draft week and stuff like that, because people need quarterbacks. These teams need a franchise guy. And JJ is incredibly toolsy. Like we've said, his best is incredible.
Yeah.
His worst is also incredible for the wrong reason. But JJ could absolutely push to making a surge up draft boards kind of like Will Levis last year. He kind of came a little bit out of nowhere and then all of a sudden just went skyrocketing up the draft boards a little bit as we got down late. It happens every year. A quarterback gets pushed up. Anthony Richardson, he was not projected to be a top 5 draft pick in December, January. But then all of a sudden, the athletic testing and everything and all that surges up, and he's 4th overall to Indy. So I could see it. All right, let's move on from that conversation. We're going to get into my favorite segment each week, which is Stonks Up. And this week we are talking about Alabama defensive back Terrion Arnold.
This guy, man. When you mentioned doing it on Terrion, I honestly hadn't heard a ton of talk about Terrion, which doesn't make any sense because when you turn on this film, it's fantastic. We're talking about a player that probably should be selected in the top 10. He is a legit number 1 corner. He's multifaceted. He can play zone. He can play man. He can play off. He can play press. He does all of it, and he never looks phased. He never looks uncomfortable. This man is so calm, cool, and collected. Like I said, I'm not sure why there is not more talk. Everyone's been saying, I've heard Kool-Aid McKinstry's name a huge amount over the past few months and not enough about Terrion Arnold. So this is like the definition of Stonks Up. He is going to be, I'm putting a stamp on this, the first cornerback drafted, period.
Yes.
The first cornerback drafted. He should go inside the top 10 because he is a cornerstone defensive back in this draft.
Well, you're stealing all my thunder with the hot takes because I wanted to say the exact same thing. And I think I put it in the group chat for cover 1 when I was watching some more of his film earlier this week. I'm like, this guy deserves to go top 10. Absolutely deserves to go top 10. I said it in there. I can pull the screenshot, people. I can show you. He is a beast. We're talking about the best corners in the last few classes with Christian Gonzalez and Devin Witherspoon and Sauce Gardner before that.
Derek Stingley, all that. Terrion Arnold, to me, feels like he should be in that tier. He feels like right there, if not just below, maybe. But he's right there with the top corners that have come out in the last few years. He is physical. He is athletic. He is strong. He is fluid. He's long. He's rangy. His hand timing is incredible. Yeah.
With the way that he throws his hand to break up a pass at the last second. It's beautiful. The stats are there. He had 5 interceptions this year, 13 pass breakups, just this season alone.
Fantastic.
He has a nose for the ball. He has incredible closing speed, his tenacity, his ability in run support, his ability to fly downhill and skate through blockers, dip his shoulder and get under and just turn a corner and attack and make a leg tackle on a running back coming out in space or a wide receiver on a sweep or whatever. The film's incredible. I love this dude. I was watching the film, same thing as you. I'm like, this dude is a lockdown cornerback 1 and should be a top 10 pick in this draft class. If he's not, whoever is drafting him is getting maybe the best value in this draft class.
It would be just like Christian Gonzalez last year dropping to 17, which nobody expected to happen. And that's exactly what we're seeing. But it really could happen with the wide receivers, with the offensive tackles, with the quarterbacks. It could drop him out. And that's, again, like you said, where you get that value. Look at where the Chiefs got Trent McDuffie a few years ago. These guys, when you get wide receivers and tackles and defensive ends and quarterbacks all pushed up draft boards, it feels like cornerback sometimes goes by the wayside. And that's a huge value for these teams.
I'm raising my hand because I'm calling it right now that he's not getting past Minnesota at 11.
Probably
I don't think there's any way that if he's on the board at 11 for Minnesota that they pass him. But then again, weird stuff happens every year. If they don't take him, I will be live tweeting the draft, being like, why?
Why? What if Kirk's not there? What if they don't bring back Kirk? Then they got to draft the quarterback.
They got to figure out quarterback. They might be in a trade up market. Maybe JJ McCarthy at 11 to Minnesota. Who knows? I'm not ruling that out. We'll see what happens.
I like that. I like that with Justin
be-
Jefferson and
that'd
Jared
be
Madison.
fun.
That'd be fun. And
That'd be
TJ Hawkinson.
That'd be a little fun real-time thought that I just had. It's fun
Sign
talking
me
about this
up.
stuff. Yeah. Who else is there sitting in the teens? Denver at 12. Potentially. I could see that. Just line them up opposite.
I was about to just pair them. Oof.
Yeah. Oh God, that'd be dangerous. That would not be fun for anybody. Las Vegas, New Orleans, Indy, top corner. I could see that.
All of them. Every
All
team
of them.
that you just mentioned could use a corner. Every single one of them. So yeah.
You know who always needs good corners? Literally every team in the NFL.
Exactly. That's why it would be. That's exactly why it would be crazy if he like fell. But it happens. But I mean, like you said, this guy, range, oily hips, the ability to just kind of pass off. I love the way he plays like zone and match zone and passes off in coverage.
Yep.
Like that's the sign in college of players that are really intelligent and know exactly what they're doing. Yeah. Like I'm just going to put hands on him and pass him to the safety, or I see someone coming across the field, I'm going to get deeper into my cover 3 space and cover that receiver. Like he's really, really intelligent. That stuff always translates. So he's definitely why we are talking about him on Stocks Up this week.
Terrion Arnold, if you are listening, we love you. And we feel like you should be drafted very, very, very highly. Okay. You deserve it. All of it. We're going to go into some Senior Bowl prep here. What we decided to do this week, talking about Senior Bowl, is put together a list of players that we want to kind of touch on. Listen, Daniel, you and I both, we are long-winded fellows. We talk a lot. We have 2, 4, 6. We have 8 names, and we have half an hour. Okay, at most half an hour. We're not pushing this past an hour-long episode. So we got to get cooking. We got to get through them. But we decided to go with 8 names on the defensive side of the ball this week. We're going defense, baby. This is not just an offense show. We scout everybody. Right. We look into everybody. We got 8 names on the defensive side of the ball that we want to hit on and talk about, and that we're looking forward to seeing in person and seeing how they look against top-tier competition. It's going to be fantastic.
Absolutely.
We're going to start it off with UCLA edge Laiatu Latu.
This guy, man, I tell you what, teams are going to be a little hesitant, I think, because of the neck injury. Let's just get that out of the way. 2 years, he didn't play football because of a serious neck injury that forced Washington to retire him. Comes back, transfers to UCLA, and he's just like, hi, guys, I can still do this at a really, really high level. And I think what we're seeing from him, just a really, really extremely refined pass rusher. He has the toolbox. He has everything you could want. He uses hands extremely well. The rip, swim, swipe, all of that, slap, rip. He has counters inside. He can come back. He's what we like to call a 2-lane rusher. He can threaten the edge and then bring it back to the counter to the inside. He has all that speed to power as well. For me, when I watch this guy, he's coming into the NFL as more of a rotational pass rusher. He doesn't possess the true functional strength from what I've seen to go up against offensive tackles in the NFL and really either set that edge or drive into the backfield and keep your anchor. And when you have arms, that we'll see what his arms come in at, but it looks like he's got shorter arms on tape. Offensive tackles in the NFL, we're talking 34, 35 inches for the most part. You get some of them that have shorter. So you have to be able to use your hands well. So at the end of the day, this guy is still going in the first round. When you have such a refined tool set like he does with his hands and how quick they are, how they can just continuously work, and he's always working. He never gives up on a play. That stuff is extremely valuable. So I want to see him against some of the best tackles in the class. Again, he played against our boy out of Oregon State. The name is
Fuaga.
Yeah, he played against Fuaga, and Fuaga owned him. They actually moved him to the opposite side of the formation.
Dude, you saw the clip that I pulled, right?
Yes, I did.
Now I know he was double teamed. People wanted to point it out. Oh, it was double teamed. Yeah, okay. The tight end was there for emotional support. People,
it was. He was just kind of patting him on the shoulder, saying, "You got this. You got this."
There, Talise. Fuaga at one point threw Latu out the club, just drove him like 15 yards towards the sideline. Now, that can happen, and every player gets beat sometimes.
Yeah, for sure.
It does not mean that Laiatu Latu is a bad player. It does not. It just means that on that rep, it was dialed up correctly, and Fuaga was in the right position. And when Fuaga gets his hands on you, you're going for a cross-country road trip. You're just driving
matchup
at that point.
It's a bad matchup for Latu. It is.
It is.
For Latu. It is.
Yeah. Latu he's a speed rusher, in my opinion. He reminds me a little bit of like prime Von Miller in the way that he like sets things up, and that it's speed. And because offensive linemen have to account for his speed, he's then able to counter and win with other moves because they have to almost like overset to account for the speed that he could potentially bring off the edge. He's hyper athletic, which is going to be really, really fun at the next level. They're going to love him. I kind of agree with you, though. I think that he might start off in a little bit of a rotation, but his toolbox is incredible. And I think that Senior Bowl is going to be a great opportunity. Guess who else is going to be at the Senior Bowl? Telis Fuaga. We might get to see the one-on-one of those two going against each other, which would just be incredibly fun for all of us, or against Troy Fatani or whatever. It's going to be great. Like, I cannot wait to see these guys go one-on-one reps. Let's move on to the next name that we have. Another pass rusher, Adisa Isaac out of Penn State. What are your thoughts on Adisa Isaac?
This is, I was struggling a little bit with Isaac because he's got like this wall sometimes in his head where he's pass rushing and he just kind of forgets that he's pass rushing. It happens a lot of guys when you don't have your plan figured out, and when your first move doesn't work, panic sets in sometimes. It does. Happens to everybody. And a lot of times I'll see him try to work the rep, and then it doesn't work, and he's just like moving his hands. He's just
and
like,
then it's like, oh no, I lost this rep.
Yeah,
right.
It's a tough guy. So he's going to be right now. I would imagine he's going to be more of a day 3 guy. Maybe he comes in around 3rd round. I'm not entirely sure yet. When I get more eyes on him in the Senior Bowl, I'll have a much better idea. But his film, and Penn State likes to rotate their players in and out quite a bit. They love doing that with the corners, with the running, with the defensive ends. But long, this guy is big. He's got long arms. That's what the NFL is looking for. He has speed to power. When he gets inside of a tackle, it's full extension and it's coming back to the quarterback. He can really get inside of a tackle, and I love watching guys do that because that translates directly and immediately to the NFL when you have that length to be able to do that. I also think he's going to be a really high floor player as a run defender. He comes in, he sets the edge. He's got really good eyes in the backfield. He never loses the football. It's really incredible watching him sit there on either the opposite side and always seems to find the football. He just kind of knifes his way in sometimes. I think he's a little slow laterally, a little stiff. Just at times you see it more in his pass rush than you do in his run defense. But he's going to be, like I said, a high floor run defender. And something was up with that field at Ohio State. He was slipping all over the place, falling. Yeah. He was. I noted like dudes on the ground all the time in this game. What's going on, Ohio State? Like that was a really weird one-off thing. But
spoken like a Michigan fan,
right? I don't know, man. I'm just pointing out. I'm just pointing it out. And the one,
I saw the same thing. He was
the last thing I'll say is that the dude's violent. He is a violent mover, legit power in his hands. When he connects, dude, he can really send a shock through a tackle. So he could again come up into the 3rd round because that floor as a run defender is it's really, really high. And I think he's going to be a very valuable player.
I think round 3 sounds about right for him. Somewhere between round 3 and round 4 is where I would kind of see him potentially going. But that's a valuable asset, like you said. He's not going to be a guy, in my opinion, that's going to come out and set the world on fire and, be pushing for top sack numbers each year and stuff like that. But he is good. He does have good moves. He is able to get to the quarterback. He had 9 sacks this year and 32 hurries. Yeah. He had good production. The production is also there. It's not like this is just a defensive project where teams are looking at him and saying he's got some tools, he has some athleticism, maybe we can build on that. The production is there. He is able to get home. I noted that he has got a really quick first step and that he does have advanced handwork. when it lands. I agree with the same thing that you said, though. When his initial plan doesn't work, sometimes it's almost like he just kind of sets and is just kind of like looking, what did I just do?
What is going on?
What?
Just some fireworks going on.
How did I make, if you're listening and not watching on YouTube, first and foremost, you're doing it wrong. Secondly, I was doing like hand stuff in the camera and it made this like giant firework explosion. I
don't know, man. That was really weird. That was cool.
Was it like,
I don't know. It just stopped.
I'm going to have to play this later. That's insane. Okay. I'm just going to put my hands in my pocket. But he has really good handwork when it is working. Sometimes he does just kind of like set and like watch and see if he can get around, you know what I mean? To help basically. But he has a really high motor. He does have really high athleticism. He does have power through his hands. He does have production. He was credited with only missing 4 tackles this entire season, which is great.
Hands, yep.
So he's a really strong hand tackler. It does good thing. I also have sets a good edge and run defense. Like you said, picked up on a lot of the same stuff. So he is going to be really interesting. I think he's a mid-round pick. Would love for him to get up into day 2. I think that'd be really fun for him. And with a good Senior Bowl, he absolutely could.
Going to have an opportunity against some of these really good tackles to showcase. So again, we're talking about the Senior Bowl because these prospects are going to go up against some of the best in the class on every level. So like I'm a big fan of what we're going to get to see, and these guys that we're talking about that we think are going to be either day 3 or late day 2. It's a huge opportunity. You can make yourself a lot of money at the Senior Bowl. We've seen it for a long time, and it keeps getting better. That's going to bring us into the defensive tackle section. We have some genuine ass kickers from Texas, guys. Woo! Byron Murphy is insane. But before I talk about him, I need to know, John, is Byron Murphy the best defensive tackle in this class?
God.
I'm going to make you choose.
I'm going to say that he is. I love Byron Murphy's film. I love his film so much. This isn't a class where you have a defensive tackle that's going to go top 10 to 15. It's not going to happen. Defensive tackle's not that way. People want their pass rushers. They don't want the defensive tackles. But guess what? Byron Murphy's a defensive tackle that had 6 sacks and 36 hurries. He had 4 more hurries than Adisa Isaac that we just talked about, who's an edge, and he's a defensive tackle. Byron Murphy is one of those rare defensive tackles that can generate a pass rush for you from the interior.
Yeah.
And that is priceless. Go ahead and ask the Rams how they feel about Aaron Donald generating pass rush from the interior for them. They'll tell you that it's a game changer and that other offenses have to adjust their game plan because of it. Byron Murphy generates that same rush from the interior. I think he's a top 50 pick all day. I think that he should be a late first round pick. I think that that's kind of where I've got him slotted in right now. He is slightly undersized, but it does not matter to me at all. He's 6'1", 308, so a little bit short, and a little bit light, honestly, for being defensive tackle. But he plays with so much agility and tenacity and a quick first step, and his ability to play big and strong. He generates a lot of power. When he wants to just say, I'm going to take you and push you backwards into the quarterback, he is more than capable of doing that, even at a slightly undersized defensive tackle. But he can also win with speed. The biggest word that I wrote down for him is he's just disruptive. He just blows up what's going on the interior of the offensive line, whether it's pass or rush. And he's just able to get home and create for himself. It doesn't always have to be pretty on the defensive line. You just have to get in the way and make noise and make a mess for offensive linemen and running backs and stuff like that to have to like try to clean up. And he's really good at just blowing stuff up on the interior. He also saw a lot of double teams, and I saw that he was fully capable of getting through those. I really don't have a lot of concerns when it comes to Byron Murphy. He is a quick lever defensive tackle that is able to penetrate with ease. My dream fit for him is that he lands in Houston. I want to see him on the interior of that Houston defensive line, being coached up by that coaching staff, getting the head coaching. Oh my God, I'm drawing a blank. I said the name earlier in the show. I'm tired. Head coach
See,
for
now
Houston.
you're doing it to me. It's D'Amico Ryans.
D'Amico, thank you. God. D'Amico preaches like tenacity and like pursuit. Those are like the biggest things that D'Amico wants out of his defense. And Byron Murphy just fits that bill perfectly. They have a need up the middle of their defense. And that to me would just be a slam dunk pick. They'd have to get him in the second though. And with the way that they're playing and they're into the playoffs, that second round pick is going to be later. It's not going to be early. So I don't know if he's going to be there for them. Hell, maybe they get a wild hair and they decide they want another defender that they're going to trade up for. Who knows? But I don't know how it works, but just fit-wise, I would love to see Byron Murphy stay in Texas, play for Houston under D'Amico Ryans.
Yeah, I think we're going to see 2 defensive tackles go in the first round this year. I think Jer'Jon Newton out of Illinois is the other guy that's going to go in the first round. And Byron Murphy,
real good.
Like they both give you anchor ability because the most impressive thing that I saw from Byron Murphy is that he can take on a double team, not just split it, but anchor himself in there. That is impressive as hell. And he's so good at it. Like it's not just a one-off thing. It's consistent throughout his tape. He and his teammate, who we're going to talk about it too, are just anchor dudes in the inside. And Byron Murphy is like your prototypical 3-5 tech. He's going to come in there and split those double teams, but he's got the legit power to be able to hold up on the interior in the NFL. I loved everything I saw about him. I didn't have any.
Here's the thing before we go to the next player. Jer'Jon Newton is also incredible as a defensive tackle. You put me on the spot asking who my DT1 is. I love Jer'Jon Newton, and everyone's going to be like, boo, Jer'Jon Newton's DT1 all day, boo. Listen, Byron Murphy is really, really, really good. Jer'Jon Newton is also really, really, really good. I'm just saying, whoever you have at 1, I don't think you're wrong either way, but the gap is really, really small. This is not just Jer'Jon Newton and then big tier gap and then whoever else at defensive tackle. Byron Murphy is a very good football player.
Yeah. But like I said, I think both are going to go in the first round. And if you have Newton 1 and Murphy 2 or Murphy 1 and Newton 2, I don't care. Yep, fine. 1A and 1B, I don't care. They're both fantastic defensive tackles, and they're going to immediately impact your teams on all 3 downs. They legit can stop the run. They can rush the passer. All 3 down players immediately day 1. That's going to bring us to Devontae Sweat. And a lot of people are saying, well, he might also work himself into the first round. I'm not quite there. I'm not there yet. I have got a solid top 50 grade on him as a defensive tackle. That's 3 defensive tackles in the top 50, guys. That is impressive for a defensive tackle.
It's a good class.
It's
and 2 of them from the same school.
Yeah. They're playing these guys next to each other on a lot of these games too. So what he's able to do is he's an anchor guy. He's like, what, 350 plus pounds or
362.
362. And
big boy.
He's an athlete too. Like he's not just this bowling ball in the middle that you plop down there and say, hey, don't move. Like that's not what he does. He's he's got good footwork. He has powerful hands. He can torque. And for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, when I'm talking about torque, it's just like offensive linemen. They can move their hips or their upper body to one direction very quickly and move people out of their way. It's extremely quick, and it happens at the drop of a hat. I have some questions about his lateral agility, his lateral speed, kind of getting down the line, and you see him kind of waddle sometimes. It's like, okay, I understand you're a defensive tackle. The amount of pass rush moves that he has. I haven't seen a ton of it, and he's got a really good swim move. And then I'm like, give me something else. Give me something else. But it works really well for him. It does. It works really well for him. He times it well. And I get a lot of stand straight up out of your stance. And in the NFL, you're going to get right in the chest and you're going to get moved. So he's day 1, drop him as a nose tackle, 1 tech, and say, cause havoc. Have them try to move you. You're not going to be able to do it.
Yeah. Devontae Sweat, massive human being, 6'4", 362. He had the second most batted balls of any interior defensive lineman in all of college, which is great. He's agile, he has active hands. He has good footwork and motor and good athleticism plus athleticism for his size. Like you said, this is not Byron Murphy. And it's so fascinating to me that these two guys were on the same defensive line playing next to each other because they are completely different prototypes. Byron Murphy can pass rush. He's agile. He's fast. He is disruptive in that nature. T'Vondre Sweat is massive because you can't push him out of the way. You try to do things to him and he goes, nuh-uh, I'm going to push you back. And he's like a disruptor in that sense, that he's going to clog the middle, take on double teams, all that stuff, be able to absorb it, not get pushed out of the way. Like you said, he's a true nose tackle. I think what it comes down to with him, you said that he would pop out of his stance a lot. He gained a lot of weight from last year to this year. Last year, he was listed at, I want to say like 340, and this year he was listed at 362.
Okay.
I think that he looks better at that 340 range playing weight, and I think that his stamina was affected because of it this year. At the 362 number, I think that as games went on, I think the stamina started to wane. And when that happened, I saw him get a little bit sloppy with his hands, pop out of his stance a little bit, stuff like that. So I think that an NFL coaching staff and conditioning staff might come in and be like, listen, we want you to play a little bit leaner because trust me, you've got plenty of mass and you've got plenty of athleticism. Let's increase that mobility and that stamina to be able to make sure that you can go 4 quarters plus, and that when we need you most at the end of the game, you're able to still be at your best. So I could see him getting conditioned down a little bit in weight instead of playing in that 360 number. But like I said, he's still an excellent defensive tackle. I've got a top 50 grade on him also. I don't think he's going to go first round. But I think that he's a clogger, man. He creates his own traffic. And I think the team's going to be really happy with him in the second round.
Yeah, these guys out of Texas, they're insane. I don't know what they're feeding them down there, but it's working, and keep doing it because we absolutely love it. That's going to bring us to
Coca-Cola barbecue.
I mean, apparently.
Listen, you know what? I'm not going to limit this. I'm not going to limit this to an hour. We're going to go like probably 10 minutes over. Let's see, 20 minutes left, 4 players, 5 minutes a player. Let's get this done.
Well, right now, since these two players also play on the same team, we're going to go over to Penn State, talk about Johnny Dixon and Kalen King, their cornerbacks. And I might have another hot take because everyone's talking about Kalen King and being the guy. I think Johnny Dixon's a better player. I think he's more versatile as a man and zone corner. He's bigger than Kalen King is. We'll see how that measures out on at the Senior Bowl. But what I'm looking at when I watch them both side to side, and because they're on the field mostly at the same time, they use Dixon in multiple ways. They kind of rotated them in at safety every now and then. You have a couple of snaps here where they play on as a 2-high safety or rotate to a 2-high safety. They blitz Johnny Dixon a lot more, and he's very quick. He has those angles, and he can get to the corner, to the quarterback. I think he has some versatility as a slot in the NFL. He can rush off there. His hip direction, his hip flexibility, and ankle flexion all match with the ability to change direction really, really quickly. He has really good eyes. And when I'm looking at him as opposed to Kalen King, I don't see a lot of the off coverage technique from King that I see from Dixon. He seems a little bit slower, and his eyes don't feel the same to me as Dixon do. Dixon feels like he's operating a little bit faster than Kalen King is, at least from the games that I watched. So I just, from what I'm seeing, I think that he's a better scheme versatile cornerback that allows, it also brings physicality as well. He was tasked with playing against, not just rotating against Marvin Harrison Jr. Against Ohio State, but also playing against tight ends. Multiple times you see him matched up against tight ends and being more of a tight end eraser. And that's a very valuable thing in an NFL that's starting to get a little bit of an influx of talent at the tight end position, something they haven't had over the last few years. So that's a valuable piece too. So, I mean, it may be a hot take. It's not to me after I watched him. I think Johnny Dixon's better.
All right, sir. So we disagree.
It was bound to happen. It was bound to happen.
At some point. And if you're listening / watching this show, we are not just going to pat each other on the back. I fully believe that iron sharpens iron, that we can learn from each other. I'm going to come in with my opinion. We'll see how this all pans out. I think that Kalen King is incredibly underrated at the cornerback position, even though he's still being talked about as being one of the top guys in this draft class. I think that Kalen King 2 years ago saw a lot more targets than he did this year because everyone decided to stay away from him and go pick on Johnny. I think that that's the way that Penn State operated this year. They stayed away from him 2 years ago in 2022. Kalen King led the Big Ten in passes defended with 21 and pass breakups with 18. I think that Kalen King is very good at ball skills when it's in the air. I think that he's able to go and get it. I think he's able to defend it incredibly well, get his hands on it. I think he's got really good technique in that way. I think that he's quick to diagnose, and I see him flying downhill often in support, whether that's for run or underneath, crossing routes or stuff like that. I think that he's very savvy. I think that I saw Kalen King beating wide receivers to the spot quite a bit, and that he separates the ball from receiver regularly. So those are the notes that I've got on Kalen King. I was incredibly impressed by the film that I have on him, especially if you go back to 2022, because they kind of just gave him the lockdown treatment a little bit this year. He saw a lot less targets in 2023 than he did in 2022. Johnny Dixon, to me, I agree with you that he has really good athleticism. That I did see. I think that Johnny Dixon is a fair corner. I think that he's pretty good. One of my biggest concerns with him is that I did not like him as a tackler. I think that there was
that's a negative on my notes too.
Yeah. I saw a lot of missed tackles. If you go and you look up the stats, he missed 25.8% of his tackle attempts this year. That's a really high number. And especially if you're thinking that he's going to be a guy that's going to be a bit of a tweener or a nickel defender that could be responsible for tight ends and supporting and run, you've got to be a sure-handed tackler in order to do that. So that's one of the biggest drawbacks for me with Johnny Dixon. He also gave up a 67.7% catch percentage this year, which is a pretty healthy number. So I still like him plenty. I think that he's a round 3 to 4 guy. I think that Kalen King could be a value, and I think that King is potentially going to show out down at Senior Bowl and lock up some of these speedsters. So I'm so excited, though. I mean, I like both these guys. I have Kalen King higher. I think Kalen King should probably be the third corner drafted would be my guess on Kalen King. And I think that the one-on-ones that we see with the wide receivers in Mobile are going to just be a lot of fun, especially against the speed guys. Like I want to see him on Jacob Cowan. Like that would just be so fun to watch and see how that matchup pans out.
There's a lot of talent at wide receiver. These guys are going to have their hands full. Like there's a lot of size too. Like there's some shorter players here, but there's some size at wide receiver down at the good old Senior Bowl. So they're going to have an opportunity again, like we talked about with the defensive ends. They're going to have an opportunity to put their stamp on it. And the one thing about one-on-ones is you don't have to tackle. So I think Johnny Dixon's got himself an opportunity to put himself out there.
Spot the ball. More. Just break up the pass, and it's a win.
Yeah, I've got day 2 grades on both of these players. I like both of them. I think that Kalen King projects for me more as a boundary kind of cover 3 or man coverage corner, where he's going to be asked to be physical and press. And if he's asked to do more than that, you might find him struggle a little bit. He reminds me of like Joey Porter light. And that's fine. Like Joey Porter was fantastic for Pittsburgh this year. He really stepped up and he showed some of the athleticism that wasn't always apparent at Penn State. He looked a little bit behind sometimes, and that's what I see a little bit in Kalen King too, from just again the 3 games that I watched from this season. So maybe the less targets made him a little complacent. That's always possible too, but you always got to be on your toes. So these guys both have day 2 grades for me. And at the end of the day, like I'm excited what they're going to do at the Senior Bowl, because like you said, this talent it's going to be so much fun to watch these players and to see how they adapt. They got 3 days of practice. So you're going to learn, you're going to see what you can do day 1. You're going to get some coaching from NFL coaches. You're going to get to come back the next 2 days and do the same thing again. So that's the best learning environment that we've got, and these 2 guys are going to have their hands full with these wide receivers.
They are. We're going to pivot to the safety position for our last 2 players, and then we're going to wrap this thing up. Listen, I'm an Oregon boy, born and raised. Grew up in a Portland suburb called West Lynn. There's another guy that grew up in a Portland suburb called Happy Valley. His name is Kalen Oladapo, safety. Grew up 10 minutes from my hometown. Decided to go to the hometown Oregon State University down in Corvallis. Much like a Jordan Poyer, who grew up in Astoria, Oregon, on the Oregon coast, which, by the way, for you people that are not Pacific Northwest natives, that's where the Goonies was filmed. So Jordan Poyer grew up in Gooниeville, went to Oregon State, 7th round pick out of to Philly, and then now is the starting safety for Buffalo. Kalen Oladapo, Portland native guy, goes down to Oregon State University. And now we're going to get to see him at the Senior Bowl and see where he ends up getting drafted. I think he's a mid-round pick. I don't think he falls as far as Jordan Poyer did. What are your thoughts on Kalen Oladapo?
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think that his size and ability to be used in multiple different ways. He can kind of be used as a big slot corner, a big nickel, I should say, not big slot, not to confuse with the wide receiver, but he's not a single high guy. You're just not going to put him out there and say, hey, go be a free safety. That's not his skill set. I don't think that he's like a huge liability in that regard, but it's not something that they did a ton with him at Oregon State. Watching him play some like one-on-one coverage, he's very quick to open his hips. So if he's like man on man, I see him just kind of open that really quickly. And against better tight ends and players that he's going to be facing in the NFL, that's going to get dinged on him. And I saw him have to recovery. Got good recovery speed and toughness to get back on the horse. There was a play he had against Oregon where he opened the hips early against their tight end, and then he came back and swatted the ball down. That's the kind of effort you'll like to see. The play doesn't end just because you opened your hips too early, and that's what I like to see from him. But he's a big guy. He is very, very willing to tackle. He wants to come downhill and just lay the lumber, and he's not.
He is the hammer, not the nail.
No, he doesn't want to be anything other than the hammer, and he's got good wrap-up technique. He gets under. Every once in a while you see him just kind of lay a guy out with his shoulder, but he's a sure tackler. And the big thing for me is that he was a team captain. As a safety, it's a huge thing for NFL teams too. So you have all of that, the recovery effort. His trigger downhill is quick, it's decisive. He's very good in run support. So a couple of things that I wasn't huge on are his eyes. I think that his eyes are pretty bad. I'll be very honest with you. I saw a lot of late reaction to where the ball is. It's going to the left, and he's still looking in the opposite direction. And locating the football, like he's very willing to come downhill and be a run defender, but he does struggle at times sifting through that traffic and finding the football when it's behind line of scrimmage, trying to get out to the edge. His pursuit angles as well. A couple of times I see him coming underneath a block instead of going around a block instead of coming underneath it. The quickest path to either the ball carrier or to where the ball is going to be. Just a couple of things, but again, he's probably going to be, I would say, around 4, around 5 guy and a very good contributor as a 2-high safety or a box safety, someone that can rotate in and give you good quality snaps, run defending, coming downhill, and again, covering some of these big tight ends.
Yeah, I have him very much in the strong safety sort of role, right?
Yeah.
Like he's almost a little bit of a throwback strong safety in the way that he's physical. He flies downhill. He's happy to go in and clean up the messes. He's like you said, he wants to lay the lumber. Like I can't help but think a little bit of Cam Chancellor. Cam was bigger than he was. He was like 6'3", 225, something like that. Cam was a monster. Like Cam was huge. Like I don't know why he was
built in a lab
safety instead of a tight end, but he played strong safety probably because he couldn't catch. But he was just a beast in the Legion of Boom. Kalen Oladapo is kind of Cam Chancellor light, both physically and also technique-wise. But just the style of play, just the throwback thumper strong safety that is going to set a tone. And if he's got a defensive coordinator for whatever team that drafts him, that's like, we hit, we establish, we make our presence felt. Like if it's that kind of defense where it's like, hey, you go and you hit. And if every once in a while you get a flag because of it, we'll take it. but we want to set the tone. Gaetano Ladapo is that kind of safety to me. I agree with you. Box safety, bring him down. Very good in run support. I think he's decent in pass protection also. Like, he's not a massive liability. He can cover some of these tight ends. Probably not the top tier tight ends in the league, but some of the other tight ends that aren't quite as athletic or polished as a route runner, he can hang with them
for sure.
And he can sit in there. He had 2 interceptions. He had 7 pass breakups. He's long. He's athletic. He's interesting as a mid-round pick. I think he's going to find a home in the NFL.
Yeah, he kind of reminds me of a Spagsy type of defensive back where they love to rotate their safeties, bring them in and be that kind of physical nature. Chamari Connor was a guy who couldn't tackle at Virginia last year, or Virginia Tech, excuse me. And they come in and he's gotten better at tackling, and he's again a quick trigger guy that comes in and they like to rotate their safeties all over the place. So it wouldn't surprise me if the Brett Veach was in like on day 3. They just continue to throw darts at the board, but that kind of a defense where you just say, hey, you go do this and be a physical downhill threat player like that, he's going to fit pretty well in that system. The last guy we are going to talk about today, I've been waiting for this because I turned on this guy's tape and I got so excited because he's electric. He is an electric player. And when you think of safeties, you don't think of guys typically that come down in the run game and take on blocks from pulling guards and anybody and not move. He plays so well. He can also play it 2 different ways. Jaden Hicks out of Washington State University, safety, kind of do it all, man. I think he has the speed to be able to play some reps of free safety if you were to want to rotate him back there. It's not ideal. He's more of a too high or box defender, but again, he's so athletic and fast that I think he can make it all work. The number one thing I wrote down when I turned on tape is he's an easy mover. This guy is click, close, hip fluidity, ankle flexion. He has all of that, and his ability to change directions, see the field. His eyes can sometimes get in the backfield a little bit too long, and you see him kind of like want to bait the quarterback a little bit, but then, there's a route I got to go get on a couple times. You have to re-trigger and get back down backfield. But I'm a big fan of this player. I think he's going to be a 2nd-round pick. I think he's that good. That type of athletic safety play is kind of needed in today's NFL, especially with all the passing that we're seeing. I love the way he attacks ball carriers. Angles. He understands angles really, really well. You don't see him take a lot of bad angles and get kind of run by wide receivers or running backs. He's a really good tackler, physical. Like I said, he's unafraid to take on any kind of block. He does not care how big you are. He'll come down. He will get his shoulder. I love the way he takes on blocks, like on pullers, on counters. He comes in, puts his shoulder into a tackle or a guard, and just forces the running back inside. That's tough to do as a safety. So this guy makes me really, really excited. He's super electric. I love him.
Yeah, I do too. A few things that I wrote down about him. I just put the word everywhere, period.
Yes.
He's all over
everywhere, man.
The field. Like, it doesn't matter what the play is. You put on any all 22 for Washington State, where the ball ends up, he typically is. There. Yeah, he's always there. He's always around it. He's incredibly physical. He has a great closing speed. I also wrote down he's a heat-seeking missile. Like, when the ball is out, it's just shoo, pop. Like, just he's there in a flash. Yeah, there was a couple plays where you want to see a safety separate a receiver from the ball. Jaden Hicks is a guy that does that very, very well. So he is everywhere, loves to be physical. One of the top safeties in the class. Absolutely. Yeah. I agree with you as a 2nd-round pick. I don't think that that's spicy at all. I think NFL teams are going to fall in love with this guy. I expect him to be all over the place in drills at Senior Bowl week. I think that he's going to make a real name for himself. Great closing speed. I mean, he's just a magnet to where the ball ends up. It doesn't matter if it's a run, if it's a pass, if it's deep, if it's shallow, if it's wide, if it's up the middle. It does not matter. He's 6'3", 212. He's got great size to him. We'll see how he measures at Senior Bowl. But the size, the physicality, the speed, the athleticism, the tenacity, and the ability to just identify what's happening and react to it quickly with full force is great, and one of the best traits that he has to his game. I think he's fantastic, man. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch these guys.
Yeah, he's really, really smart. I think he's going to show better in man coverage at the Senior Bowl than people expect him to because of his safety. That hip fluidity and ankle flexion, his ability to just turn and go and change direction, it's legit. It's all on full display. I think he might get some corner reps as well. Maybe teams want to see him in the slot because I think he offers some of that flexibility, even for a bigger guy. He probably comes in around 6'2", 6'1". I don't think he's 6'3". Myself.
I don't either. Like him and Kitano Ladapo looked very similar height-wise on the field, and they're listed 2 inches apart. So we'll see how that kind of shakes out when they measure.
We will. But then this conversation again, we're not even in the thick of the corner and safety class, and these guys are fantastic. Who we got to talk about today. So we get to see all these players and more at the Senior Bowl. That's why we're doing so much deep diving for you guys. So you have an idea of who to watch at the Senior Bowl as well. These are some of the big names. Don't forget, we're going to see tons of guys that maybe you don't know all that well. They're going to come out and have good play. Like last year, I thought Thomas Incomm out of Central Michigan, or maybe that's the wrong the college, but he was a guy that I really liked at a defensive end play at the Senior Bowl last year. There's going to be some of these guys that we don't really know yet, that we don't have tape on, but we have tape on these guys, and it's always fun to go back through and get into the nitty gritty for you guys.
Yeah, next week will be the last episode before the Senior Bowl, which is insane. Woo! It's going to be fun. So next week, we're going to flip over to the offensive side of the ball and start breaking down some of those guys. We're really going to get into some of the running backs. That's a position that we have not talked about yet on this show with this draft class. We really want to make sure we get into some of them. Spoiler alert, Jalen Wright out of Tennessee. Very fast, very fun. We will talk about him. We will talk about many more. Thank you for joining us. You can give us a follow on YouTube. You can click the like button. You can subscribe. You can do all that. You can listen to the podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. Please share it with your friends. Please. If you got friends that are Chicago Bears fans and they're looking for any glimmer of information that they can find for what's going to happen with the first overall draft pick, send them our way. We'll try to shed some light on that probably every single episode between here and April, because that's how it's going to go. But thank you for joining us this week. We really appreciate it. We will see you next time.